Boom. Hey, this is Jake Elkins from Ironclad Wrestling, and you're watching Matburn.
Welcome to Matburn. How you doing, Jake?
What's up, man? How's it going, Scott? What's up, Brandon?
Good. We got Jake Elkins, who's the head coach of Ironclad Wrestling. And we enjoyed our session with Brandon so much that we asked him to come back. And now he's going to help host. So he's going to bombard you with questions today.
Okay, sick. Let's go.
All right. So you want to take over right away, Brandon?
Sure, yeah. So I guess I've been away from Alabama here for a couple of years. Definitely been trying to keep my eye out and come down when I can, but it's definitely been a lot different. So I guess I would like to just get a little bit of a backstory about, how you got into what you're doing, just kind of tell everybody, because I'm sure there's some people that still don't know. I think a lot of people do, but I would love to hear more too as well.
Yeah, so, I would say somewhat parallel to you. Right, I'm sure you tell a similar story. So I grew up wrestling in Alabama. I like to say that I wasn't very good because I wasn't. It was a very different culture, So it was I think when I was a senior in high school, like float wrestling was a thing. They were like throwing out T-shirts at senior nationals, and track wrestling was a thing maybe like the year before. Like they hosted, they were involved with the state tournament stuff. But it was like the Stone Ages relative to what we have today, And so there was like really one club for like my last 2 years of high school, 3 years really, I guess. Other people were driving to Atlanta. I know you know this. You know all about that. Going to see Arturo Remy was like the OG down here. So there's only like one club. And I worked out there for about a year and a half or so out of high school. Went to college in South Carolina. Had a moderate level of success there. I wound up wrestling, bumping up, wrestling heavyweights that fit my lifestyle. I got married and had kids and stuff during college, and it was way more important to try to be a good husband and father or whatever else than successful at wrestling, I guess, at that level. And so, although that wasn't ideal priority, that was just kind of the way it had to be. So I stopped cutting weight, gained weight, wrestled heavyweight. And then I got back in 2012 and have been running club stuff since. And so I started out, I was going to start my own club, and wound up partnering with a guy, and we kind of ran 2 campuses side by side for a while. And then in 2016, started my own thing, and officially my own thing, I guess. And it's Ironclad, and so we've been, just kind of getting after it. Whatever. I would say classic club thing, It's kind of a fun deal, though. Growing up, I have a kind of a strange passion for coaching Alabama kids. They're a little different. It's different than if you live in. They're the same and they're different, I guess. There's different challenges being in the South, but I like it, man. Definitely passionate about it. So that's been the game plan, man.
Why don't you talk about some of your superstars that you've had along the way?
So we've had. I don't know how many state champs, a ton of those kind of guys, right? An Alabama state title doesn't hold a ton of water. As far as national level, we've had I don't know how many All-Americans and national champs. Most notably in recent years, we had Christian Knopp, who was 4-time undefeated state champ out of a small school or whatever. Several-time All-American, Fargo, different tournaments, whatever. But he won senior nationals, and then which. My man here made that a thing, right? So
Brandon was the first.
He won senior nationals, which is a big thing. At the same time, we had a freshman, Corey Land, who won freshman nationals, which is not a big thing, but 106. He's won several tournaments since, but he made the world team, and so was the first, U.S. world team member or whatever for high school age. And so he was on cadet world team. We got to go do that. It was tremendously cool experience. All that's been canceled this year, so it's devastating. But trying to keep doing those things with more kids. You know what I mean?
I believe you also had a wrestler in the Deaf Olympics, right?
Yeah. So in 2012, we had 2012. Probably the years mess up now. We had another kid. That was one of the first real coaching challenges I had. I had a kid who wasn't, by regular American standards, folk style, freestyle, whatever else. Like I would say, most people thought he wasn't very good, but he's like deaf, and so there's just tremendous challenges in that. Wrestling's a visual thing, and so I had some unique experience from it. From like Demir, I can't even pronounce his last name, was one of my coaches in high school at the club level, and so he spoke horrible English. He's Russian, and was like, fifth or something at the Olympics or whatever. And he, anyway, so I got to coach with him, and I had some like experience from that, but trying to learn sign language and whatever else, and just coach him was definitely neat. He qualified he was like, hey, I want to try to go to the Worlds and the Olympics, whatever else, and so we did that. It was very cool. He actually got a bronze medal in Bulgaria, which was it was crazy cool. Super challenge. Definitely makes you a better coach. I dare someone to take that challenge on. It's so much harder than I ever anticipated.
Yeah, I once coached a girl with cystic fibrosis, and that was the most challenging. I had a teacher had to wrestle from a stance where she was on one knee because that was the only way she could keep her balance. And she actually ended up beating a boy her first year. It was very exciting.
It's just crazy. You don't think about how much you rely on stuff like that, but like you can't give them feedback during a live roll or during a match or anything. I would catch myself in the corner early on coaching him yelling, and I'm like, he can't hear me. Like, what am I doing? And so just like, there, be quiet. If you're yelling, you're reminding the official that he couldn't hear it. So, you can't, if he does something, you can't, there's so much feedback that happens in the middle of whatever's going on that you can't give. And so you have to articulate what you want done or what needs to be done very clearly in the simplest of forms. He's very, very bright. He graduated from college now and everything else, but you have to use very simple English terms to communicate with him. It was just crazy challenging. Tons of fun. I really enjoyed it actually, but that was like the first year that I was back from college. And so, he was like a bronze medalist in the Deaf Olympics, which was very cool.
That's really, really awesome. I kind of wanted to kind of tie off that there and kind of ask about your club a little bit and just the culture. I kind of looked on your website. I try to keep up with Alabama wrestling, and what I think you have going on is really cool. And, one thing that I really appreciate is, yes, it's about wrestling, but kind of what you said about your own story, how, life came and you had a family and everything, and that was a priority. And wrestling taught you a lot, I'm sure, to help deal with that, manage that and everything. But, how can you pass that along, and how can you teach these younger kids? When I was looking on your website, it definitely seemed to show that wrestling's awesome. Wrestling's a big deal. I want to teach you. I want to show you, but also that we have a culture here that we want to help you grow, mature, be awesome people.
Absolutely, yeah. So, I'm definitely a person of faith, right, and jack it up as much as anybody, but wrestling is like the platform for all those things, I think that all kids, boys especially, like need wrestling. I think it's just such a part of us. You take two boys and lock them in a room together for 30 minutes, like they'll be wrestling before when you come back. And so I think it's something that they really need and they're missing in society. And so being good at wrestling is what they care about, right? They want to win. And I would say sometimes they don't, it's not that they care about being good at wrestling, but they want the, y'all forgive me, I'm going to check this. Sorry. So like, 100% of our kids care about being good at wrestling, but really they kind of care about it in most cases secondhand. Like there's some girl at school that they like, that they want to impress, or they're looking for a place to fit in. They need some self-confidence. Really anything. They want to be better at football. Like I could give 100 reasons, and so they don't come to us because they want to be an All-American. They come, typically speaking, especially when you're talking about someone who starts out. So it's all about making them better at whatever, right? They need to be better men. They need to be better leaders in like their school and in their community. one day they're going to be done wrestling. There really isn't a professional deal with this. I have several kids who are like, I'm gonna start a club. I'm gonna do what you do, and I'm like, dude, I don't recommend it, man. Like, I'll help you, but there's better ways. And so at some point we're all done wrestling, but what you learn wrestling is absolutely what helps you to do the other things in life, right? I got married at 21 and had 2 kids back to back with my wife, and the things I learned in wrestling are what helped me navigate that while trying to get a degree and be a student athlete and hold a job in the summertime while training and taking online classes. Like, I could have never done any of those things without wrestling. So boys need wrestling. They need the physical outlet, but they need what it teaches them. And because they care so much about being successful and everything else, it really primes them to be ready to learn. So that's what we're really trying to do, right? And what better calls, So
I'm curious to hear from both of you. There's a difficulty in the state keeping people, retaining wrestlers from year to year. And I believe that the balance is between the having fun part and the winning at all costs part. And the closer you are to the having fun part, the more likely they are to come back. But you also, you have a range of those kids. Some are like Brandon, who dedicate their whole life to being the best they can be. And other kids, like you said, are just trying to get in shape or meet a girl. And, so how do you balance that with the range of kids you have? And where do you fall on the spectrum of fun versus winning?
So I think, our youth program, we say we prioritize 3 things. It's fun, friends, and then fundamentals. So the last thing is the fundamentals of wrestling. And that's like the whole mission of our youth program. I really left. There's a lot of reasons. In the past, like, I've been part of programs where winning was the only thing, and people appreciate winning. We, as Americans, we freaking love winning, right? But at what cost, And so, and there, you can say that really at any level. Wrestling is, you can't want to do it because your dad loves it. You can't want to do it because your coach yells at you. Like, you have to want to do it, And I can see Brandon nod. Like, I grew up with 2 brothers. We were wrestling at home, and so it was just the thing that I love to do. I'm 31 now and still haven't graduated from that. Like, I just want to wrestle all the time. It's what's in me. And so the first thing you have to do is have fun. They need to make friends and have like peers that they want to socially interact with and do those things with, train with, right? But if you don't develop that have fun and have a positive experience and over time develop a passion for wrestling, they'll never stay with it because it's hard, man. Like, it is not easy, and the more competitive you get, the harder it gets. The more, I try not to call it sacrifices, but the more investments you have to make, and there's just supreme accountability in wrestling, which is a good thing, but it's a painful lesson to learn as, a 12, 13, 15-year-old kid. And so we say, we kind of keep them having fun and just having the next exposure to wrestling where they're training, they're on their practice, they're on the mat, whatever. And at some point, they decide that they want to be competitive. They decide that, hey, I want to be a state champ, And in a lot of the cases, you're like, dude, you are so far from being a state champ right now. But you say you want to do it, okay, well, let's go. If that's what you want, then this is what you have to do. And you let them guide those things. We have, I know 100% that if I demanded our kids' time and said, you're going to do this, if I locked them in the room or said, you have to be here 4 days a week and we're going to do 2 privates a week, like, we could have a room full of high school champs. I mean, like national champs. I mean, really, really, really good wrestlers. But at what cost, Like, because you only got, I've heard a lot of guys, some old timers, John Smith, some other guys talk about, you have about 6 years of hard training in your body. And if you, redline the engine in high school, right, or even worse, middle school, like, golly, kids don't want to do it anymore, man. Like, they're like, dude, forget this. I can do something else.
And
so that's
the body tends
who are really good who never want to wrestle in college.
The body tends to break down too over time. Brandon's body broke down in college. Manny's body broke down in high school.
Amen. Yeah, I mean, that's a huge thing. Like, I mean, at the end of college, halfway through college, it's the college wrestling is brutal. Wrestling itself is brutal, but I always tell people, like, wrestling is like the rodeo, man. It makes you age in doggy years. Like, it's crazy. It'll beat you up. So you can't. It has to be playful. It has to be laid back, and you have to kind of scale in time, right? When the kid's ready to train hard, let him train hard. And if they don't want to train hard, like, there's no amount of – you can remind them what they ultimately want, which is to be a world team member or be a national champ, to be the Division I athlete at Cornell, your senior national champ, whatever. Remind them of those things, and they'll choose to do the thing. But if they ultimately say, like, no, I don't want to do that thing, then, you know, what are you going to do? Yell at them? I don't think that's really the best way. So,
right. I actually agree. I think, something you said earlier, about your college and everything, there is a lot more to life than wrestling. And if you force a kid into wrestling, they'll find that out real quick. There's other things out there, especially in the South. People want to play football. People want to do other things. So I think times have changed. Me and Arturo Holmes actually talked quite a bit about this. And he said that the way I used to run a camp, I can't run it that same way today. Yeah. Kids never show up. And, I mean, I think a part of it's a change in time, but I think it's for the better. I really do. I think, we understand what kids want, what kids need, how to help kids mature and grow. And I think the biggest thing, and, I mean, I'm considering getting into coaching. I'm not sure on what capacity yet. I kind of want to get my career started, but I definitely have a passion for the sport, and, hopefully I can pass that along someday. I definitely enjoy teaching and everything, so I would definitely want to do that. And I personally think that the best way to do that is to give them a path and an option. You can show them the path, but you can't force them down it. So, I mean, exactly, just you can lead a horse to water. You can't make it drink. And kids know that. Kids want to be successful, but they don't want to go out there and lose. Nobody's going out there trying to lay down, consciously making that decision. But, when given the right environment, allowing them to have fun, have a positive attitude, have a positive environment that they can come and learn and grow and mature, they'll be better athletes in the long run. It may be a little painful in the beginning, trying to get their attention. Like you said, with like younger kids, sometimes it's hard, fun and friends and stuff may come first, because how long can you hold their attention to teaching the fundamentals? It really, really depends on the kid, I think. And at some point, they'll make that decision for themselves. And, I mean, for me, I was 7 years old, and I told my dad I wanted to be really good at wrestling. And he led me in that direction. He showed me that path. But I made that choice, and I never thought any different. People always ask, was your dad hard on you? Did he push you too hard and all this stuff? And he really gave me a choice. He let me do what I wanted to do, and he said, I'll support you in anything you do. If this is what you're telling me you want to do, I'll support you. And it wasn't that he didn't push me, he didn't ask me, he didn't remind me. All the time he would say, hey, here's your goal. If you want to be a state champ, you got to make sure, you're doing everything you can to continue to get better every day.
Yeah, so there's a disconnect. I'm sorry, there's a disconnect between wanting to be a state champ and knowing how to be a state champ. I asked all the middle school kids at the beginning of the season, who wants to be a Metro champ this year? And everyone raised their hand. But unfortunately, we ended up with only one. And every practice, I'd remind them that they raised their hand. And they, if they really wanted it, they needed to work harder. But how do you get them from wanting to knowing what to do? Like, to know how hard to work and to be able to know that they're pushing themselves to that limit?
I think it's sort of simple, right? I mean, if you look at adults, like, hey, I want to drive, I want a $110,000 Corvette, whatever car, right? I want this $100,000 thing. Okay, cool. Well, here's what you have to do to do that. Like, you have to save this much money, like, every month, and then over time you have this much money, it's going to cost you, $950 a month, if you have this much, whatever, if you can get approved this money, it's going to cost you $1,000 a month to pay for this car. And they're like, well, I don't want to do that. Okay, well, then you don't really want to, CO6 Corvette or whatever, like, you can say you want that, but there's a price to pay. And if you're willing to pay that price, then you can have that thing. And if you're not willing to pay that price, then you can't, And so we talk about it very simply. I'm like, look, if you say you want to do this, that's fine. This is what you have to do. And if you don't want to do that, that's okay with me. But if you want to do it, like I'll hold you to that. Like I'll show you the way. If not, that's okay. You don't have everyone isn't going to be a Division I wrestler. Everyone's not going to be a state champ. Like everyone's not going to be a national champ, whatever, right? Whatever level. You just have to say, do you want to do that? And if they say yes, then say, well, this is what you have to do. And if they say, I'm willing to do that, then you show them the way. Otherwise, you say, it's okay, man. Just have fun. Just wrestle. There's guys who play football that are not the starter. They're not the superstar, but they want to play football. And I think it's okay to be that person in wrestling. What tends to happen is over time, people take ownership and tend to want to. You know what I mean? And so they're maybe the degree that they're going to be successful because they started wrestling when they're sophomore versus fourth grade. Like maybe their ceiling is only so high, in high school, or hey, you got 24 months to peak, to kind of claim your career, right, for high school. And so maybe there is a certain level they can go to or a limitation related to that, but it's 100% up to them. And that's what I love about wrestling is that it's like, in today's age, we rave about entrepreneurship, and that's like the new way, and to me, wrestling is like the ultimate entrepreneurial model. You know better than me, Brandon, but I heard Gabe Dean share his story about being a quarterback in, I guess, Michigan, right? He went down to Georgia Tech, and they gave him like 10 minutes on the field, and we're like, yeah, you're not tall enough, and dismiss. And I think about Gabe Dean, I'm like, dude, what a freaking stud, what a all-American guy, and in 10 minutes someone dismissed him. Like, what a huge mistake. I can't imagine there's anything that guy couldn't be great at. And so in football and other sports, baseball, basketball, like they use measurables and they'll disqualify people. In wrestling, that doesn't happen. And so you can literally be as good as you want to, regardless of athletic attributes. I would say like none of that matters.
So with the new science that's coming out that shows that bodies need more rest than people used to think. And then you said that the human body only has like 6 years of ultimate peak performance in them. What do you both think is the correct age to start somebody in wrestling?
Brandon, you want to start or I will? It doesn't matter.
Yeah, I can start. I think there isn't a correct age. I think it's really an ambition. I don't think you've ever forced a kid to start wrestling at 4 years old or whatever. I mean, for me, I kind of told my story the other day. I mean, I was there and I just loved it. So, I mean, when I was there and I didn't win a match my first year, I was a chubby little 4-year-old. I wrestled like second graders. I was not any good. But I loved it. I loved being there. It wasn't hard on my body and it was fun. I had friends. I had a social atmosphere. I had a way to get my energy out. My mom and dad loved it. They put me to bed when I got home. And I think as long as it's that's fine. I think you can introduce it to them, but you can't, force it to them at any age. You have 6 years of hard training, or I'm not even sure about the 6 years, but I'm pretty sure what they're saying is like training for the Olympics, training to be a national champion. I can guarantee you that there's very few people in middle school that are training at that level.
How much of a break do you think kids need after each season?
Go ahead, Brandon. I'm sorry.
I'll finish up here. One thing I think is like being a sport athlete or whatever, doing everything you enjoy, having fun. If you just love wrestling, that's fine. But do everything you can. Get the exposure, get the experience. As far as getting the rest, I think that's more talking, at least from my personal opinion, it's more talking on like the elite performance, the elite level, which I would say most high schoolers, even countrywide, I mean, there's a handful. There's a couple high school national champs ranked first in the country that might be able to, make a stamp on the Olympic scene or whatever, but very few. And it doesn't mean you can't get injured. It doesn't mean the same, but I had a 3-hour practice in high school that wasn't as hard as an hour practice in college. It's just a different level. It's a different physical output, and that has wear and tear on your body. But I don't think that's necessarily always, and I think it's a choice that you make, how much you want to put in. Sorry, one last thing what we were talking about earlier about wrestling is what you kind of put into it. I totally, absolutely agree that, you know, you can be anything you want to be, any body, any shape, any size, any color. It doesn't matter. If you're willing to put in the work, you can be successful. And one thing, you know, even people think that some people just have that gift and want to be there and want to suffer and want to go through all this pain, this training and everything. And don't get me wrong, it's awesome. But the goal is to be successful, to be the best you can be, and to get the most out of that situation. Like, I just want to be the best I can be. I want to reach my potential. But I couldn't have done that without people around me. I told my coaches my goals, hey, hold me accountable, push me to this level. And what Jake was saying was, if they tell me this is what they want to do and they'll do the work, I'll help them. But it's hard after a hard practice to do extra, you know, to do extra. It's not that I wouldn't, but it's nice to have that little encouragement, have that push and everything. But yeah, sorry, I kind of went in a loop. But
no, I mean, I'm with you. I think you're spot on all the way through. You know, when you talk about when can you start, I mean, we have people who, you know, I tell people like, 6. I tend to say if they're ready for school, they're ready to try wrestling. And we have people who bring their kids out as early as 4. I had one kid who was 3, which I thought he was like, disclaimer, I thought he was 6. You know, but they were like, yeah, he's 3. He was a giant. And his brother, like, is a Division I running back or something. Anyways, I mean, we bring people who come in and, like, that kid's 4 or 5 and, like, he's crying. And I'm like, hey, it's okay. Like, take him home. It's all right. Like, give him 6 months and bring him back for a day and see if he likes it. You know, like, and just give them the next exposure. Like, if they don't like it, don't make them do it. You know what I mean?
When you were in Bulgaria, I know you met with a lot of international coaches and Russian coaches. And, you know, I've heard rumors that they don't allow their young kids to compete, but they train a lot. Is this true?
Yeah, so it's youth wrestling over there is like games. I mean, it's games, you know, and we kind of adopted a similar model. It was really interesting talking to a lot of the coaches. I was the rookie on staff. You know, everybody else had like 20 tours overseas, and we got to spend a lot of time with, you know, some of the different Russian bloc countries. I don't even remember all the countries now, but a lot of those provinces, I guess, and they were talking about just the way they do it, you know, and it was so much more laid back, man. Like, they're not giving out scholarships at 10, you know what I mean? Like, which you wouldn't know by the way that parents are screaming at kids at any given tournament on Saturday, you know. It just blows my mind. One thing that I got this from my brother. So my brother is about to get his black belt in jiu-jitsu, and I'm a big fan of jiu-jitsu. I don't know if you guys like have ever, you know, tinkered with it, but the idea is that people spend 30, 40 years on the mat, you know, and so it gets so much deeper than I would say like where we're at with wrestling. And so anyways, but like he was talking about parents who like yell at their kids, and he said, you know, he goes over and he's thinking my brother's more lethal than me. He beats me if we roll. I wouldn't admit that. He'll probably see this. But so he was talking about like parents, you know, yelling at their kids and stuff, and he was like, wait, like, why don't you come out here? Like, let's grab another parent, and I'll grab another dad. Y'all come out here and get ready to wrestle. Get ready to roll jiu-jitsu or whatever else, and see how you feel about it, you know. And he's like, immediately people get nervous because they don't want to come do the thing that they're yelling at their 7-year-old about, you know.
Right.
And so getting them to lay back that, like, man, who wins does not matter, you know. And like, by the way, everyone's watching, so just let them play games, let them interact, and get after, you know. And it really leads to so many other problems that run. But like, the point is, it's, you know, the Russian way is different, man. Like, when they decide to get strict, it is what you would call abuse almost, you know, definitely verbal abuse. But they're so laid back before then, as far as like, they're like, no way, you don't compete, like, no way, you know, play position play. And it's very interesting to hear them talk about. Very refreshing, I would say.
I remember when you came back from Bulgaria, you said to me it changed your entire perspective of how you looked at wrestling, which I believe is how you came up with your new Ironclad system. And I was talking to Brandon about it, and he was very interested in learning about it. So if you could, you know, give him a little primer on how it works.
So I've got this thing in the background. Okay, so there's a bunch of. So when you start wrestling multiple styles, right? Okay, so if you wrestle folk style, only, okay? If you do one thing only, right? And Brandon, I think you wrestled mostly folk style only for the most part, at least the best I remember.
Yeah, I did. I really didn't have any exposure to freestyle
Me
personally.
neither until college, right? Like I was
Yeah.
I was like 20 years old, probably like 19, 20 years old, probably 20 when I like decided that I liked freestyle and thought it was cool, And so I was the same. So if you only do one style, you can kind of rabbit hole down a position that isn't necessarily true, right? So I look at things in principles, right? And so the ultimate goal is to find things. Our phone's alerting here is to find things where like one's true, always true, right? One's true, always true. And so when you start wrestling multiple styles, if you wrestle folk style and you wrestle freestyle and you wrestle Greco, the rule set is different. And so the thing that is very primary that you have to understand that's fundamental in folk style is different than what's fundamental in freestyle or fundamental in Greco. And so as you start studying those three and you kind of marry them in the middle, you realize like there's some basic principles that guide each position, and the rule set allows you to extend that a little more here, right? So folk style, you can scramble and leg pass and whatever, where in freestyle, you can scramble, but you can't expose your back while you're scrambling, right? Like it's a very different thing. And so because when you change the rule set, it changes everything, right? Change the strategy. And as you do that, it allows like kind of discovery of new positions and new things. And as you marry them, you find these truths, right? So that was sort of my like infatuation. Really, what's been driving me the last decade is in trying to learn freestyle and Greco because it's helping me discover these new truths. And so, Einstein is quoted saying something talking about like the ability, genius is the ability to make something which is complex seem simple. And so we've been chasing truths and these principles that we can learn where you can learn something that is, so if this thing is awesome when you're 20 years old, this is really high level wrestling. Like, how does that scale back to when a kid is 7, that he learns this fundamental thing that he doesn't have to unlearn along the way. So what you learned at age 7 is appropriate at age 10 and 12 and 15 and 18 and 22. And so that was really kind of like the first like idea is that like I think there's a way to do that. And in studying the 3 styles, it helped me like blend that, I guess, right, or kind of discover some parts of that. Something that's really unique is, I mean, man, I don't know many coaches that do private lessons with 7-year-olds, but I spent a good part of my career as a young coach, especially, really just trying to pay my bills, man. So I had a kid that was 7 and crazy dad, and I was like, yeah, we'll work out with him. So you kind of start mapping like physical literacy, like this kid is 7, what can the average 7-year-old do? What can the 10-year-old, 12-year-old do? So you're just trying to pursue these truths. And once you identify that there's progressions, you figure out that like, man, I have to teach this concept, right? So I learn a concept when I'm 7 or 9, 10, whenever I start wrestling, and that concept is still true at age 18. And what upgrades is the progression of that position, right? The way that I do a single leg, the way that I do whatever. And so I wasn't, I'm not married to any one thing. The way that we teach wrestling or the way that I wrestle now, if I'm wrestling my kids, it's funny. It looks nothing like me as a competitor at any point, because I'm just so I'm just like really obsessed with finding like the best way. And so I really am crazy passionate believing in this thing. And so I created this formula. I call it the Ironclad formula. That's what this thing is behind me. And it's, if you look at it, you're like, it looks like an algorithm or something at first, or, what did you say about making it simple, Jake? Like it's whatever. So it takes some explanation, but we use this formula to basically like, it's really a filter that we put everything through, right? So another thing that I think is true is that anything can be good wrestling, right? So if you have, I created this like 8-part thing. There's so many ideas, really like landing, and explain it simply is a challenge in itself. But like, so in football, the first thing they do before you ever go run a play in a game or even in practice, the first thing they do is put it on a whiteboard and they start drawing it up, X's and O's, right? And I don't know, did you grow up playing football, Brandon?
I did. I played until I was probably 12.
Okay.
Not too late to where it got too deep in depth, but I know the basics.
So I grew up playing football, baseball, and I was way better at those than wrestling. If I was smart, I probably would have stuck to that. You know, if I could talk to my old self, I'd have been like, yeah, dude, don't quit football. You know. But so I was a quarterback, and the first thing you had to do was sit down and learn your playbook, right? And you had to be able to write out what everybody's role was and why and whatever, and make correct reads and all these things, you know. And if you go to spring training, like the day, you know, one, they give you a playbook, or they might have even given it to you the week before. And like on day 3 of spring training, if you can't line up correctly for these 25 plays, dude, go sit your butt on the sideline. Like you can't play. Like you don't even know how to do that. You know, you don't even know where to go. And so this is effectively, I would say, it's your playbook, but you can use it to like measure the value of the play. Hey, does this play work or not work? You know, because of some basic principles and truths. One thing that we talk about a lot is that we say two is one is none, right? So 2 is one is none. So and we do this game a lot. I'm going to kind of use my hands, but so we have one guy stand like this, right? And you stand opposite your partner. He's like so, and you have your hand and you start chopping, right? So if I just chop, the first time he kind of looks at you, and 3 or 4 times later, like, catch my hand, and he figures out the timing, and he catches your hand, right? And so then you start going, okay, well, now I have to fake to it. So you fake, and the guy guesses, and then his hands open up, you chop. And, like, once you figure out how to fake high, low, like, the guy can never catch your hand if you can play between the position, you know. And so if I was relating that back to so that's a concept, right? If I was relating that back to football, you have, like, a run play, that's awesome. You know, I remember playing video games with my brother. He'd, like, goal line defense, run play. You know, it's so funny. If I have a run play, that's good, right? And then separately, I have like a passing play. That's good. I have 2 plays. In wrestling, we would say you have 2 moves, right? But until you understand the relationship between the run play and the pass play, you can't really, like, you don't have offense. So the relationship between the 2 plays is where offense really exists, right? Like, that's where you can run a play action. I run the ball. They put all the men in the box to try to stop the run play, and then you fake the run play and throw a pass play, right? And so until you have 2 plays, a single leg and a snap down, right? That would be just like a run play and a pass play. You have a single leg and a snap down. Until you understand the relationship between those 2, you don't really have anything. You know, you can't play between the position and make the guy guess. And so until then, you're looking at, you know, I have to be bigger, faster, stronger than my opponent to make it work, you know. And so I think that's what happens overwhelmingly in wrestling. You hear dad like, do it harder, you know, do it harder. And, like, that's just not true, you know. It doesn't have to be that way. Seth Gross is, although he's athletic enough to wrestle Division I, like, he's not a specimen, you know what I mean? And you watch that guy wrestle, like, it's impressive. Satya, maybe the best guy to ever do it, you know, from Russia, is not a physical specimen. And he's, what a wizard, you know. And so he plays positions super intelligently. And so we talk about, you know, we use the same thing to chart offense, to figure out where kids need more development, and really figure out what do they actually understand. You know, that's a huge thing in wrestling. It's like, how much do they actually understand? Because, I wish I had $1 for every time I've seen a dad or a coach, you know, after the match yelling at the kid, like, why did you do that? That dumb, you know, just chewing their butt, like, I showed you, or we, you know, the first step, they're just yelling. The second phase is there's like I told you so, or I told you not to do that, or whatever. 100% of kids that are wrestling matches want to win, man. Like, it just drives me crazy. Like, 100% of them want to win, you know. They're never, if a kid does something stupid in a match, it's because he thought it was a good idea. You know, either thought it was a good idea, or he was super tired, and, you know, fatigue makes cowards of us all. You know, we're just willing to make a deal with ourselves that we know was bad because we were tired. You know, and so if you have a kid wrestle and he's making bad decisions in a match, and coach sees that, like, it's your job to educate him. You know, so when I'm talking to our best guys, Corey Land lost, and, you know, he won Greco and made the Greco World Team. Was awesome. And so that like day 3, so Greco, he won. The second day, we won all our matches in freestyle, and this is at Cadet World Team Trials. Day 3, we wrestled Steve O'Poulin or whatever in the finals, right? And he might even work out with you guys. I don't know if he comes over to Grant. He's a stud.
I don't think I know who he is. Where does he go to high school?
So I'm not positive. He's the little kid who went viral like with a mohawk like 8 years ago.
Oh, I remember him.
Little 7-year-old just crushing kids' souls. So it's the same kid. It's crazy, and he's good.
He's a Florida kid, isn't he?
Do what now?
Isn't he from Florida?
So I don't know where he's. I don't know if he might be originally from there. I know he lives in New York and has been in New York. I think he might be from there. Pretty sure he is. Whatever. He's a stud, dude. He's good. Mad props to him. Rarely do you see a kid at 7 who's such a world beater who grows up to still be good, at age 16, right? And what a rare thing. So, anyways, he's a stud, and he beat us in a position, and he caught Corey in like a front head series and rolled stuff and cradled or pinned him or whatever. And so Corey was like devastated. He's so pissed, it ain't like he hadn't lost in America in like 2 or 3 years leading up to that, So he was devastated. And the conversation we were having back there was, I told the whole story to say, we were talking about like, hey, what did you feel? Like what were you thinking in this position? Because I thought that he didn't wrestle a position intelligently. And he said, well, I felt this. So I thought that I could do X. And, it didn't work out like he wanted to. And I was like, okay, I can see that, And so you're getting into, rather than being like, why the heck did you do that? That was stupid. Like, what are you doing, man? Like, which is the low-hanging fruit because it didn't work out. Like he got hemmed up out of the position. There was something that he felt it was a good idea in his head. And obviously he's 16 now. He had to get a waiver to wrestle at Worlds because he was so young. So he's got 2 more years at that age group, which is exciting. But despite his youth, like he understands wrestling at a very high level now. And so I could, you have to trust his instinct out there. So I was like, what did you feel? Whatever. He gave me feedback. And so we can go back and, literally he was in my basement last night. We were working on the same board. How does this work? What does this work? What do you think here? And so you can chart offense and help them understand what's a good idea, what's a bad idea. And like have them write this thing out. Our philosophy is if you can't chart it, you don't know it yet. I know I'm just talking long, so interrupt me if you need to, but in college, I remember we were studying, so I was going to be an engineer to a math teacher, and I decided, like, dude, I'm not teaching math the rest of my life, so I got into sports management and physical education, which is, like, the easiest thing ever if you grew up playing sports, right? And so, which was fine. I was there to major in wrestling anyways, I guess, right? So I remember I had to get up and teach this lesson in a sports management class that I was like, man, this is whatever, dude. This is a club wrestling program. I wrestled one of these in high school. This is easy. And I got to teach the class, and I was like, because what I thought that I knew, because I'm like, oh, I've done this, like whatever. When you start having to teach something, you start to figure out that you don't have it organized in your brain all the way. There's all these, you think you have a bowl, and really you have a colander. It's got 1,000 little holes in it, and it won't hold water. And so you look like an idiot up there trying to teach the lesson, and if you don't understand the details of it, you can look like an idiot out there wrestling. And so we make them chart it where, there's all kinds of science about, if you write something down in your journal or whatever, like I've seen one study that said you're like up to 100 times more likely to remember something if you write it down.
Brandon, did you ever have a journal?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Those are fun to look back at.
Yeah.
Have you got any journals for wrestling, Brandon?
I have a handful of them, but most of them are in Alabama. I really haven't been far enough out of it to look back, I guess. Oh my gosh, dude. You want some good laughter? Go back and look at like what you said when you're 13 years old about wrestling. It's a fun thing. You're like, wow, so bad. Even a couple years removed from college, I would look back and be like, holy crap, dude! Like if I could wrestle that guy again, that was what I thought. Yeah. So there's all kinds of research about writing things down. So now we have them not just write it down, but organize it correctly. And so they'll write it down, and I'm like, yeah, okay, well, here's all the problems with the way this is written up. The same way that if this was a football game, John Gruden quarterback camp comes to mind. You have him sit down with
Andrew Luck or whoever the top draft picks are, you can see yeah, well, who covers this guy or what happens if this thing changes or whatever. So you start to understand things at a completely different level. And so if your knowledge goes that deep, whether you think about going, I always say deep, so you go deep down the rabbit hole. You could say ascend to new heights, however you kind of visualize it. But when you start to understand things at that depth, the basics that you need to be successful are they become autopilot. There's when we were at the Olympic Training Center this summer, I got this from Gary Mayab, who's the developmental coach for the U.S. Greco team. Awesome dude. But he said he told me a story, and so he said Olympic divers dive 5 times a day at the Olympic training. So they dive 5 times a day, but they only get wet twice. Like, how do they do it? And I was like, is this a riddle? Like, what are you talking about? He was telling me this, actually, this is in Bulgaria when he was talking about this. And I'm like, what? Wait, what? That didn't make sense. And so he finished the story and said, well, they go through their dive 3 more times, but it's completely mental. So they find a spot, sidewalk, park, whatever. They line up. They do their complete walkthrough, tuck, hand behind, boom, and mentally, like their eyes are closed, and they do their dive 3 more times. And so they jump in the pool twice, but 3 more times they get it every day. And like that mental rep is what makes them Olympic level divers. And I was just like, wow. And so, there's so much overtraining in wrestling. When you start, if you play football, and that's we live in football culture, right? This is Alabama. So people, I tend to use that term, or that as like a platform or catalyst to describe all these things in wrestling, because we just understand them so much more. In football, you're like, oh yeah, of course, that's how you do it. Like, they wear pads like 2 days a week, and they're in shells. They're in their shoulder pads and helmet the other days, and they're doing walkthroughs. On game day, they come in and are doing walkthroughs in the gymnasium after they have their pregame meal or whatever before the game starts, and before they ever step on the field that they know where to line up correctly, that they're thinking correctly. The offensive coordinator standing there with the quarterback and running back going, what are your reads? Who's your block? Who do you have on this thing? Whatever. All the positional coaches are there, and so ahead of time that they're going to get it right. I already know they're going to get it right. Drew Gilmer is a buddy of mine. He's the head coach at Clay Chalkville High School. He has this guy, he tests him throughout the week with Google Forms. He knows that 87% of his players know what to do on this play versus versus the other plays in his playbook are 97% correct or 100% correct. And so the play that's 87% correct, he doesn't run and he doesn't call it on Friday night because he knows that they need more practice on it, before they can put it in the game, because he can't afford to have a 5-yard penalty because somebody didn't line up correctly or there was confusion, And so it's just a totally different level, And in football, you got a 12-man staff, 8 to 12-man staff. It makes sense that they're that deep down the rabbit hole as far as what matters. In wrestling, you have one coach a lot of times, 7th through 12th grade. If you've got a really established program, you probably have 3. Some have 5, but you're talking about 5 coaches for 100 kids. And the challenge of wrestling is so much different because you're not just a positional coach anymore. Those 5 coaches are 7th through 12th grade, and they coach the 106-pounder, and they coach the heavyweight, and everybody in between. And so, a lot of this is right now, we have to simplify, honestly, to explain, because I think there's just a lag. People aren't ready for what you can do with it. And so that's really the greatest challenge with it. But I mean, 100%, this is the future of it, I would like this to be, I'm already kind of working behind the scenes on this. Right now we have a video platform that where we have all these techniques that we've already put through this filter that they already mesh together in a system. But I would like this to be an interactive app where, somebody says single leg and they click single leg, there's a video attached to it. And if they can't do that, they can scale it back to the one before or even before that, where it's literally, there's levels to it. That takes someone smarter than me to build. I can explain where it goes, but luckily we have some good friends and some other business ventures that I've got going that do know how to do that. So hopefully that is the future.
That's really awesome. I guess kind of to sum, I guess, the system up, I did watch a video on you kind of explaining it and the triangles and everything. To me, it made sense. To everyone, maybe it doesn't. And I can get where it can get pretty complicated pretty quick. I mean, I followed for the most part. But so maybe I'm wrong. Correct me if I'm wrong. But I'm thinking, I guess the simple way to explain it is a lot of kids. I remember you saying a list of like you list your best takedowns, right? And that's the way they think. They go down the list or whatever, and they're one dimensional. They're one thought process. And this is really a dynamic way to get them to not just go out there and be able to wrestle through positions, but to think through positions and adapt in matches and really to get to the next level. Because when you go out there and you have one shot and you're talking about your best shot, I think you should have a best shot, but to every best shot, you should have an opposite side best shot that's a counter, I would say. And I mean, that's kind of, what you're doing, and a lot of it is tying multiple things together. It's not just one move. It's not just one thought process. It's not just one action. It's an action, a reaction based on what they do. I know where to go from there. I really like it from what I've understood about it, and I'm sure we could sit and talk for hours and learn more. I really think it's cool. I think at one point in time, earlier in my career, if I could have learned that, it would have been very helpful. So I hope, it can be really helpful to all the young guys in Alabama and help continue to grow the sport. But, yeah, that seems really cool. I was just kind of going to, does that make sense? Or
Yeah, 100%. That, that's the challenge is, here I am, I'm in my office and I'm locked in and, whatever, I'm so far down the rabbit hole. So I have to it literally takes effort to go okay, posture your brain. I'm talking to a 10-year-old that has been wrestling for a year. You know what I mean? How do you explain this to them? And so there's kind of tiers to it. It's something that, dude, it scales at every level. But it's exactly what you're saying. You have to, the idea in wrestling, we overwhelmingly preach you got your offense, stick it to them, whatever else. And your offense, I've said that 10,000 times. Look, your offense, we got to wrestle in your offense. Well, like I said a minute ago, offense is the two-play system. Offense is understanding the relationship between two things. If you have a move, or a play or whatever, that's not it. I don't choose that I'm going to hit a single leg. I remember standing I was getting ready for the national semifinals with a wrestler. We've had a bunch of guys there, so that doesn't tell who it is. So I'll let him remain exclusive. But we're getting ready for the national semis, and he's like, "I'm going to go out here and hit it with this move." And I was like, "It's 90 seconds before the match," and so that's not the time to correct him, right? I'm like, "Absolutely, man, let's go. Freaking make sure you play the position, bang on him a little bit, let's get it moving, and create create the opening you want." But in my head, he'd already decided, I'm going to single leg this dude. And I was like, we've lost, right? Because ultimately, I don't choose. If I'm wrestling, I don't choose what happens. I can try to create the look for that to happen. But if I decide, so when I was wrestling in high school, I wanted to high crotch everybody, right? And so, but if you led, so if I'm right-handed, I'm reaching to one leg to hit a high crotch, right? If he leads the other leg, I was like, "What? I can't high cross that leg anymore." What do you do, right? Ultimately, the other guy, if I decide that I'm gonna, go goal line defense and shut something down, then you can't run the ball anymore. You have to pass the ball, right? If I decide that I'm gonna go in a 3-point stance or both hands on the mat, all fours, you're not hitting me with your low single, which is your best move anymore. You better be able to front headlock the guy and score. So having options where you can play between it is, it's the only way, right? Sun Tzu, I'm a big philosophy dude. Sun Tzu talks about that, and I guess it's the art of war or whatever. It's just a huge thing. The long sword and the short sword. It's an interesting read if you're a dork like me about grappling and wrestling stuff.
Well, that's great, Jake. I really appreciated your time, and we could talk to you for hours about this stuff.
Yeah, sorry, dude. I'm long-winded as it is.
I hope you would come back and get more into depth with your triangle system. If
We
you
can talk about something besides this too. Like we don't have to talk about.
Yeah. I would love to get both of your perspectives on what we can do to improve Alabama wrestling, because I know you both have thoughts on that. So let's plan on doing another segment on that in the next week or so.
Man.
Yeah,
And I'm not sure why I don't have an Ironclad shirt yet, but I've always
I know a guy who can take care of that.
I've always wanted one, and I need one to wear on the camera here. So,
Heck yeah, man. Hey, for real, it's really good catching up with you guys. Brandon, good to virtually see you. Right?
Yeah, that's the best we can do right now with all the craziness going on. But it's really good talking to you guys. Definitely get our wrestling fix a little bit. And it's during this time, I mean, we got to get together and meet and connect with people. I'm super excited to see where this continues to go. Scott, thanks for having me here again and being able to chat.
Yeah, I'm really excited that we can do this again.
This should be cool, man. I appreciate it, Scott.
All right, guys. Well, thank you so much. I've got an interview coming up in an hour with Lee James, so this thing's rolling. We'll just keep it going.
Very cool.
All right, we'll talk to you soon.
Good luck with the club.
Hey, see you guys later, man. Good catching up. Y'all take care.
Okay.
Take care.
Bye.